The first thing Jamal Carter noticed was the way the officer said it, like a shrug, like a fact no one bothered to argue. "Don't take it personal." The voice crackled over the patrol radio. "You're just statistics." Jamal stood on the curb with his hood down, palms open, the cold seeping through his sneakers. Police lights painted the street in violent color. A few neighbors watched from behind curtains. A phone camera lifted, then dipped. Jamal's heartbeat thudded so loudly, he wondered if the microphone on the officer's vest could hear it. He had done everything right. Walked home straight from the community lab, badge visible, backpack light. Yet the officer's gaze kept sliding past his face, past his words, landing somewhere older and uglier. "Where'd you say you were coming from?" the officer asked again. Jamal answered again. His voice stayed calm, trained that way by years of warnings. "Be polite. Be still. Don't argue." The officer chuckled. "Funny, numbers say something else." That was the part that burned. Numbers were Jamal's language. Numbers were what he trusted when people lied. He'd spent 2 years buried in datasets, cleaning bias out of messy inputs, designing a system meant to make policing fairer, safer. Now, the same kind of system was being used to pin him to the pavement with a knee of probability. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. The officer turned toward the cruiser, waiting for confirmation from the screen. Behind Jamal's ribs, fear and disbelief twisted together, because somewhere downtown, a database Jamal had built was about to speak, and it was about to decide who he was. Marcus Reed learned early how numbers could lie. The patrol lights washed the bus stop in alternating red and blue, turning rain into glittering shards. Marcus stood with his backpack hooked on one shoulder, fingers curled around his phone, the screen still glowing with lines of code he'd been debugging between classes. He was 17, thin, tall, hoodie zipped, waiting for the number 14 to take him home for his internship. "Hands where I can see them," the officer said. Marcus froze. Shoes scraped behind him. A flashlight beam cut across his face, lingered on his hands, his backpack, his skin. He lifted his palms slowly. "I'm just waiting for the bus," Marcus said. The officer snorted. "You fit the statistics." That word hit harder than the cold. Statistics. Marcus swallowed, heart ticking like a clock under glass. "What does that mean?" "It means crime spikes around here after dark," the officer said. "And kids like you make my job harder." Marcus glanced at the bus schedule posted on the pole, then back at the badge. Officer Daniel Crowley. "Am I being detained?" Crowley stepped closer. "You're asking legal questions now." Marcus stopped himself. He'd learned when to stop. Silence, his mother said, could be safer than truth. Crowley unzipped the backpack without asking. A notebook slid out, pages dense with graphs and annotations. A laptop followed. "What's this?" Crowley asked. "My schoolwork." Crowley flipped a page, frowning at equations. "Looks like some kind of scam." "It's data modeling," Marcus said quietly. "For the city?" Crowley laughed, short and sharp. "Yeah, and I'm the mayor." The radio crackled. A dispatcher's voice bled through, bored and distant. Crowley listened, then waved a hand. "We'll run you. See what the numbers say." Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket, a calendar reminder he couldn't see. Final review, crime analytics platform. He imagined the servers downtown humming, the dashboards updating, the system he'd helped design digesting fresh inputs. Crowley typed Marcus's name into his cruiser computer. The screen lagged, then refreshed. Crowley's smile faltered. Across the street, a woman pretended not to watch, keys clenched between her fingers. A man filming lowered his phone when Crowley glanced up. The city breathed like it always did, indifferent and loud. Marcus felt heat crawl up his neck. He thought of his mother's warnings, his father's quiet nods, the rules that changed depending on who was counting. Crowley leaned into the cruiser, waiting for the system to speak. Somewhere, code Marcus had written weighed risk scores, mapped patrol zones, predicted stops. He wondered if the algorithm could feel shame. The computer chimed. Crowley straightened. For a second, Marcus saw confusion flicker. Then something harder. The bus roared past without stopping. Rain thickened. Marcus stayed still, hands raised, as if the night itself were taking notes. Sirens wailed nearby, unanswered questions stacking, time stretching thin. While Crowley's radio whispered codes that sounded like verdicts to Marcus, and 20 seconds felt like a lifetime breathing underwater alone. Marcus Reed had believed that if you cleaned something carefully enough, it would stop hurting people. The fourth floor of the Municipal Innovation Building smelled like burnt coffee and recycled air, the kind of place where optimism had to survive on spreadsheets and mission statements taped to glass walls. Marcus sat at his shared workstation near the windows, visitor badge clipped to the drawstring of his hoodie, his backpack tucked carefully beneath the desk like it might disappear if he didn't keep an eye on it. "Relax," Dr. Helen Porter said, setting her mug beside his keyboard. "No one here bites." Marcus gave a polite smile. "I'm good." Helen studied him the way surgeons studied scans, curious, impressed, cautious. She was in her early 50s. Silver threaded through her hair, voice trained into calm authority. She had been the one to call Marcus's principal, then his mother, then him. "Exceptional aptitude," she'd said. "A natural. You'll be working with our predictive deployment model," Helen continued. "Mostly bias audits and feature analysis." "I know it sounds dry." "It doesn't," Marcus said quickly. "I like the dry parts." That made her smile again. "Of course you do." Around them, the office hummed with quiet urgency. Analysts leaned toward one another, whispering over screens filled with heat maps and rolling numbers. A city Marcus knew by heart had been flattened into grids and gradients, blocks turning yellow, then orange, then red. He didn't need the legend to know what those colors meant. A tall guy in a button-down shirt leaned over partition. "So you're the high school kid?" Marcus looked up. "I'm Marcus." "Evan," the guy said, "don't let them scare you. This place eats idealism for breakfast." "That's comforting," Marcus said. Evan grinned. "You'll see." A woman nearby swiveled her chair around. She had tight braids pulled into a bun and eyes sharp enough to cut glass. "Ignore him. Or don't. I'm Lila." "Marcus." She glanced at his screen. "You code clean." "I tried to." She laughed quietly. Clean code doesn't always mean clean outcomes. Marcus stored that away. The first week disappeared into onboarding and orientation meetings where words like innovation, equity, and efficiency floated around like balloons no one intended to grab. Marcus buried himself in data instead. Arrest records going back 10 years. Patrol logs. Call for service reports. He cleaned duplicates, flagged missing values, standardized formats. The work soothed him. Numbers followed rules, even when people didn't. During one review session, Marcus raised his hand. "Why is prior arrest frequency weighted this high?" he asked, pointing at the model output projected on the wall. A senior analyst named Tom adjusted his glasses. "Because it's predictive." "It's recursive," Marcus said. "It feeds on itself. Areas with more arrests get more patrols, which produce more arrests." "That's correlation," Tom replied. With policy, Marcus said. The room went quiet. Helen folded her hands. "We're aware of the concern. That's why we downweight the variable." "Why not remove it?" Marcus asked. Another analyst spoke up. "Because the department expects results they recognize." Marcus frowned. "Results like what?" "Like fewer complaints," the analyst said carefully. "Like feeling proactive." Marcus nodded slowly. He typed the compromise into his notes. Fingers stiff. Incremental change, he told himself. This was how systems shifted. Small nudges, patient adjustments. On Thursday, the police liaison attended the briefing. Officer Daniel Crowley took the empty chair at the back. Uniform crisp, posture relaxed in a way that suggested the room belonged to him already. His name badge caught the light when he crossed his arms. "So this thing tells us where the trouble's going to be," Crowley said, nodding at the screen. "Saves us time." "It identifies statistical patterns," Helen corrected. "Not individuals." Crowley smirked. "Patterns are individuals, Doc. Just zoomed out." A few analysts chuckled. Marcus felt heat rise in his chest. "Actually," he said, before he could stop himself, "patterns reflect inputs. If the inputs are biased, the output just launders that bias. Crowley turned his head slowly. What was your name again? Marcus. How old are you, Marcus? 17. Crowley laughed. 17. And you're telling me how my city works. I'm telling you how the model works, Marcus said, voice steady. There's a difference. The laughter thinned. Helen cleared her throat. Let's stay focused. Crowley leaned back. Look, kid, I've been walking these streets since before you could spell algorithm. Your math just puts numbers on what we already know. Marcus didn't respond. He stared at the map instead, at the red blocks clustering where his aunt lived, where his barber worked, where he caught the bus every night. Later, in the break room, Lila leaned against the counter beside him. You're brave, she said quietly. Or stupid. She shrugged. Same thing around here. Over the next few weeks, Marcus noticed what wasn't in the data as much as what was. Complaints that vanished after internal review. Stops logged without outcomes. Fields marked optional that seemed suspiciously empty in certain precincts. He asked questions. He got polite answers. He stopped getting invited to some meetings. At night, Marcus rode the bus home, city lights smearing across the windows like wet paint. He replayed code in his head, replayed conversations. His mother asked about his day, and he said, it's fine, because she already worked too hard to carry his worries too. One evening, curiosity beat caution. Marcus stayed late, waiting until the office thinned and the cleaning crew started their slow circuits. He copied the dataset and ran an alternative model, one that stripped out variables tied directly to historical enforcement. No arrest frequency, no stop density. The map changed. Red zone softened, shifted, spread outward instead of stacking on the same neighborhoods like a thumb pressing down. Marcus's pulse thudded in his ears. This was different. Not perfect, but different enough to matter. He saved the file under a neutral name and logged out. As he rode the elevator down, he caught his reflection in the mirrored wall. Young, black, eyes tired but alert. He wondered which version of the city would see him first. The one he was trying to build, or the one already encoded into policy and habit. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere downtown, sharp and unanswered. Marcus pulled his hoodie tighter and headed for the bus stop, unaware that the official system upstairs was still learning, still optimizing, without his corrections. And soon it would learn his name. Marcus learned to recognize discomfort disguised as professionalism. It showed up as tight smiles in meetings, as calendar invites that disappear without explanation, as comments that sounded reasonable until you listened closely. On the surface, nothing had changed. He still had his badge, still had his desk, still had access, mostly, but the air around him had shifted. Hey, Evan said one morning, lower his voice as Marcus logged in. You didn't hear this from me, but Tom's not thrilled. About what? Marcus asked, though he already knew. Evan tilted his head toward the glass-walled conference room. Your questions, your experiments. Marcus's fingers paused above the keyboard. I didn't break any rules. Doesn't matter. Evan said, you broke comfort. That day's agenda focused on patrol optimization. Charts filled the screen, response times improving, arrests up in designated zones. The language was celebratory. Efficiency gains, Tom said. Clear evidence the model is working. Marcus raised his hand. Helen nodded, cautiously. These gains correlate with increased stop frequency, Marcus said. Not increased crime resolution. We're measuring activity, not safety. Tom sighed. Activity is safety. No, Marcus said. It's exposure. There's a difference. A woman from policy cleared her throat. The communities in question are high risk. Based on what? Marcus asked. Historical data, which comes from prior enforcement, Marcus replied, which targeted those communities. Silence stretched. Helen spoke carefully. Marcus, your point is noted, but we also have to consider stakeholder expectations. Marcus looked around the table. Who's the stakeholder here? No one answered directly. After the meeting, Helen stopped him in the hallway. You're right about many things, she said softly. But timing matters. Timing for who? For change, she said. Systems don't move all at once. They move people all at once, Marcus said. Helen closed her eyes briefly. Just be careful. That afternoon, Marcus pulled raw stop data tied to precincts using the model most aggressively. He overlaid demographics, time of day, outcomes. The pattern wasn't subtle. Black teenagers stopped at triple the rate. No corresponding increase in contraband recovery. Warnings logged as discretionary contacts. Probable cause cited as presence in high-risk area. Probability, Marcus realized, had become permission. He built visualizations late into the evening. Clean, clear, impossible to misunderstand. When he emailed them to the internal review list, the response was swift. Thanks, Marcus. We'll take this under advisement. The phrase meant nothing. The next morning, his access to certain data sets was gone. He tried again. Error message. He swallowed and walked to IT. Oh, yeah, the technician said, scrolling. Permissions update. Above my pay grade. Who authorized it? The technician shrugged. Police liaison requested tighter controls. Marcus thanked him and walked back to his desk, chest tight. Officer Daniel Crowley appeared in the office more often after that. He stood behind analysts' chairs, commenting freely. See that? Crowley said one day, pointing at a hot spot, that's where we earn our paychecks. Marcus didn't look up. That's where you're sent. Crowley chuckled. Same thing. No, Marcus said quietly. One's a decision, the other's a command. Crowley leaned closer. Careful, kid. You're starting to sound political. I'm sounding factual. Crowley straightened. Fact depend on who's counting. That line stuck with Marcus. At home, his mother noticed a change. You eating? She asked one night, sliding a plate across the table. Yeah, Marcus said, poking at the food. She studied him. You okay? I think so. She nodded, not convinced. Your father used to say numbers don't protect you. People do. Marcus thought about that as he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He thought about his father's hands, rough from work, careful with him, about his mother's constant vigilance, about how they'd taught him to move through the world quietly, responsibly, like safety was something you could earn. At work, the pressure increased. Marcus was removed from review committees. His internship supervisor changed. Feedback arrived wrapped in concern. Great technical skill, one email read. Needs to better align with organizational goals. Another said, recommend focusing on assigned tasks. Assigned tasks now meant minor bug fixes, cosmetic improvements, anything but the core logic. One evening, Lila pulled up a chair beside him. They're freezing you out. I noticed. She hesitated. You should decide what you want. What do you mean? I mean, she said carefully, do you want to be right or do you want to stay? Marcus laughed without humor. I thought those were the same. They aren't, she said. That same week, a news alert flashed across a screen in the break room. City celebrates tech-driven policing success. Marcus read the article 3 times. Quotes from the mayor, from the police chief, from Dr. Helen Porter. No mention of bias audits. No mention of limitations. Just results. That night, Marcus reopened his alternative model at home, running it on anonymized data he'd backed up legally. He refined it, tested sensitivity, stress-tested assumptions. The results held. The system didn't have to work this way, but someone wanted it to. The next day, he found Officer Crowley waiting near his desk. Funny thing about statistics, Crowley said, not bothering to lower his voice. They don't care about feelings. Marcus met his eyes. They care about design. Crowley smiled. And who designs them? Marcus didn't answer. Exactly, Crowley said, walking away. 2 days later, an internal memo circulated announcing expanded deployment of the model citywide. Marcus read on the bus ride home, the words blurring as the city passed outside. He watched a group of teenagers board, laughing loudly until they noticed a uniformed officer at the front. Their laughter dimmed, shoulders tensed. Marcus closed his eyes. Probability wasn't innocent. It carried history, choices, fear disguised as math. That night, as rain streaked the windows, Marcus opened his laptop and began documenting everything. Emails, access logs, model versions. He didn't know yet what he would do with it. Only that silence, too, was a kind of decision. And the system was already speaking loudly, in a language that sounded neutral until it knocked on someone's door. Rain came down harder than it had any right to, sharp drops needling Marcus's jacket as he stood on the flickering streetlight at the bus stop. The night smelled like wet asphalt and exhaust. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Another notification from a news app he hadn't opened yet, but he ignored it, eyes fixed on the empty street. Then the cruiser slowed. Marcus felt it before he saw it. The way tension crept up his spine like a warning signal. Tires hissed against the curb. Red and blue light bloomed across the sidewalk, swallowing the darkness. His shoulders tightened, instinctively still. The door opened. "Evening." Officer Daniel Crowley said, voice easy, almost friendly. Marcus turned slowly. "Evening." Crowley's flashlight swept over him. Hoodie, backpack, hands. "Out late. I'm waiting for the bus." Crowley glanced at the schedule posted on the pole. "Uh-huh." He tilted his head. "You live around here?" "Yes." "Funny," Crowley said. System flagged as blocked for elevated activity tonight. Marcus felt his jaw clench. "Based on what?" Crowley smiled. "Statistics." There it was again. The word landed like a verdict. Marcus shifted his weight, careful not to make sudden movements. "Can I see some ID?" Crowley asked. "Am I being detained?" Crowley's smile faded just a touch. "You being difficult?" "I'm asking a question." Crowley sighed theatrically. "Kid, relax. This is just a quick check." Marcus handed over his school ID and internship badge. Crowley took them, eyebrows lifting slightly at the logo. "Well, I'll be," Crowley muttered. "City Innovation." Marcus said nothing. Crowley walked back to the cruiser. The rain drummed on the roof, loud in the sudden quiet. Marcus stared straight ahead, heart pounding, every second stretching thin. He thought of his mother's voice, "Be polite. Be still." He thought of the files saved on his laptop, the evidence quietly accumulating. The radio crackled. Crowley leaned closer to the dashboard, frowning. "Say that again." Marcus couldn't hear the dispatcher's words, only the tone shifting, sharpening. Crowley glanced back at him, then at the screen. Another crackle. A pause. Crowley straightened slowly. Marcus's stomach dropped. Crowley walked back, expression different now. Less smug, more guarded. "You work on the crime analytics system?" Marcus swallowed. "I interned there." Crowley scoffed. "Intern?" "Yes." Crowley looked down at the badge again. "System notes you as a technical contributor." "That's accurate." Crowley's jaw tightened. "So the same system that says this block is hot is partly your work?" "Yes," Marcus said quietly. "Which is why I know it doesn't say what you think it does." Crowley laughed once, sharp. "You think you're smarter than the numbers?" "I think I know how they're built." Crowley's eyes hardened. "Then you know why you're standing here." Marcus felt heat rush to his face. "No," he said. "I know why you say I'm standing here." Crowley stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Careful." Across the street, a woman fumbled with her keys, pretending not to watch. A man paused mid-step, then crossed quickly to the other side. The city did what it always did, looked away. Crowley's radio chirped again. "Crowley," the dispatcher said, louder now. "Stand by." Crowley pressed a button. "Go." System update flagged. The dispatcher continued. "Individual not a match for current risk criteria. Advisory only." Marcus exhaled, slow and shaky. Crowley didn't move. "Crowley?" the dispatcher prompted. "Copy." Crowley said curtly, ending the transmission. He stared at Marcus for a long moment. Rain streaked down his face, blurring the lines of his expression. "So," Crowley said finally, "the system clears you." "It doesn't clear me," Marcus replied. "It just doesn't condemn me." Crowley's mouth twitched. Don't get cute. I'm not, Marcus said. I'm being precise. Crowley stepped back, returning the IDs. You should be careful, he said. Systems change. Context matters. So do inputs, Marcus said. Crowley leaned in close enough that Marcus could smell coffee on his breath. You embarrassed me back there. At the office. I told the truth. Crowley straightened. Truth is a luxury. The bus roared into view at the far end of the street, headlights slicing through the rain. Marcus felt a surge of relief, so sharp it almost hurt. Crowley waved him off with a dismissive flick of the hand. Get out of here. Marcus climbed onto the bus, heart still racing. He took a seat near the back, watching the cruiser through the fog window as it pulled away. His hands shook. He pressed them together, breathing slowly. The bus lurched forward. Downtown, alarms went off quietly. By the time Marcus got home, his phone was buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, messages, an email from Helen marked urgent. He dropped his backpack by the door and sank onto the couch. The email was brief. Marcus, we need to talk first thing tomorrow. Please do not discuss tonight's incident with anyone. Incident, like it had just happened to him, not because of him. Another notification followed. This one from an unknown number. You don't understand how big this is. Stop. Marcus stared at the screen, pulse thudding. His mother came out of the kitchen, took one look at his face, and froze. What happened? He hesitated. Then, I got stopped. Her mouth tightened. Are you okay? I'm home. She pulled him into a hug, holding him longer than usual. Marcus closed his eyes, breathing her in, grounding himself. Later that night, after she went to bed, Marcus opened his laptop. He logged into a secure folder and reviewed the access logs. There it was, a query run on his name, on his badge ID, on his neighborhood. Someone had fed him into the system. Marcus leaned back, staring at the ceiling, rain still tapping at the window. The algorithm hadn't just spoken tonight. It had listened, and now it knew where to find him. Silence didn't arrive all at once. It crept in through pauses, through unanswered messages, through the careful way adults chose their words when they thought Marcus was too young to notice. By Monday morning, the building felt different, as if the walls themselves had learned his name and decided to forget it. Helen Porter didn't meet his eyes when he walked into her office. Sit, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. The blinds were half drawn, cutting the city into gray stripes. Marcus, Saturday, you said it was urgent. Helen folded her hands. What happened Friday night was complicated. I was stopped, Marcus said, because of the system. Helen exhaled slowly. The system flagged the area, not you. That's not what the logs show. Her head snapped up. You access logs? I have access, Marcus said. Or I did. Helen looked away. Marcus, you need to understand the position this puts us in. Us, Marcus repeated. Or you? She winced. The department is asking questions. About your role. About scope. My role is intern, Marcus said. My scope is math. They see it differently, Helen said. They're concerned about boundaries. Marcus laughed softly. They ran my name through the model. Helen's voice sharpened. They shouldn't have. I've made that clear. But they did, Marcus said, and no one stopped them. Silence pressed down between them. Helen finally said, For now, we're placing you on limited duties. No direct access to live deployment data. So I'm grounded. This isn't punishment, she said quickly. It's protection. From who? Helen didn't answer. Back at his desk, Marcus found his terminal stripped down to read-only permissions. Dashboards replaced by placeholders. Messages unanswered. Lila caught his eye from across the room and gave a small shake of her head. Don't. At lunch, Marcus sat alone. Across the room, analysts clustered in low voices. He caught fragments. Too risky, liability, should have known better. He focused on his sandwich, chewing mechanically. The taste barely registered. That afternoon, an email arrived from the city's legal department. Please preserve all documents, communications, and code related to the crime analytics platform. Marcus read it twice. Preserve meant don't delete. It didn't mean we believe you. At home, the atmosphere was heavier. His mother turned down the TV when he walked in. "Your aunt called," she said. "She said there was something on the news." Marcus dropped his bag. "What kind of something?" She hesitated. "About policing. About data." They watched the clip together. A smiling anchor. Stock footage of patrol cars. A headline scrolling beneath. "City defends predictive policing program amid transparency concerns." Helen's face appeared on screen, carefully composed. "The system is a tool," she said. "It doesn't make decisions. People do." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. That night, he sat at his desk, laptop open, surrounded by notebooks filled with diagrams and marginal notes. He began organizing everything: emails, commits, meeting notes, access logs. He annotated timelines, linking decisions to outcomes. The patterns were clearer now. Missing data, fields clustered around complaint records. Certain precincts consistently underreported stops. Variables labeled contextual modifiers quietly amplified risk scores in majority black neighborhoods. It wasn't just what the system counted. It was what it ignored. Marcus labeled a folder silence. Over the next few days, the pressure increased. A guidance counselor called him out of class. "We've been contacted," she said carefully, "about your internship." "Am I in trouble?" "No," she said quickly. "Just scrutiny." At work, Helen stopped seizing him on emails. Meetings happened without him. When he asked questions, answers came wrapped in vagueness. "We're still reviewing. It's under discussion. Let's circle back." Officer Crowley, meanwhile, seemed louder than ever. Marcus saw him one afternoon through the glass wall, laughing with Tom, pointing at a map. When Crowley caught Marcus looking, he raised his eyebrows in mock salute. That evening, Lila met Marcus at the elevator. "You need to be careful," she said. "I am." "No," she said. "You're being quiet. That's not the same thing." Marcus leaned against the wall. "What do you want me to do?" She hesitated. "Decide who you're protecting." At home, his father finally spoke. "You can stop," he said one night, folding the newspaper. "No shame in that." Marcus looked at him. "If I stop, it keeps happening." His father nodded slowly. "And if you don't, it might still happen. Just to you, too." Marcus stared at his hands. "I know." Later, lying in bed, he replayed the bus stop, Crowley's smile, the radio crackle. The moment the system corrected itself, not out of fairness, but classification. Marcus understood then that the system didn't see innocence. It saw exceptions. On Friday, a sealed envelope waited at his desk. Notice of suspension, pending review. No explanation. No timeline. He packed his things quietly, aware of eyes tracking him. Helen stood in her office doorway, watching. She didn't speak. In the lobby, Marcus paused, visitor badge heavy in his palm. Outside, the city moved on. Cars honking, people arguing, laughing, living. The system continued to run, uninterrupted. At home, Marcus opened his laptop and logged into a secure cloud drive. He uploaded everything. Then he drafted a message. Not to the city, not to the police. To an independent data ethics group he'd followed for years. To a journalist whose byline kept appearing on stories about algorithms and accountability. He stared at the cursor, blinking patiently. His mother knocked softly on the door. "Dinner." "In a minute," Marcus said. He typed, "I helped build a system that's hurting people. I can prove it." He attached the files. Before hitting send, Marcus hesitated, not out of fear, but grief, for the version of the world he believed in, for the adults who'd promised better, for the quiet that had tried to swallow the truth whole. Then he pressed send. The silence in the dataset broke, not with noise, but with exposure. And somewhere downtown, people who'd been comfortable in that silence began to realize it had a name. The hearing room was designed to make everything sound calm, with paneling, soft lights, microphones that clicked on and off with polite little sounds. Even the chairs were padded, as if discomfort were something that could be managed with upholstery. Marcus sat at the long table near the front, hands folded, his mother beside him, her knee bouncing despite her best efforts to stay still. Across the room, cameras lined the walls. "This is not a trial," the council chair said, voice smooth. "It's a fact-finding session." Marcus almost smiled at that. Dr. Helen Porter sat 3 seats down, posture perfect, a stack of papers aligned precisely in front of her. She hadn't spoken to Marcus since the suspension notice. When their eyes met briefly, something like apology flickered and vanished. The council chair nodded to the first speaker, Officer Crowley. Daniel Crowley approached the podium with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. His uniform was immaculate, his voice steady. "Our department uses data-driven tools to allocate resources efficiently," he said. "They don't target individuals. They identify high-risk areas." "And your stop of Marcus Reed?" a council member asked. Crowley didn't hesitate. "Standard procedure. The system indicated elevated risk. I followed protocol." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "So you didn't exercise discretion?" another council member asked. Crowley spread his hands. "I relied on objective information. That's what we're told to do. Objective, reasonable, neutral." The words floated easily in the room, landing softly, like they always did. Helen spoke next. "The model is advisory. Officers retain full discretion. We emphasize that repeatedly. Yet officers cite the model in justifying stops," a council member noted. Helen nodded. "As one factor among many." Marcus raised his hand slightly. The chair noticed. "Yes, Marcus." He leaned toward the microphone. "With respect, that's not how it works in practice." A murmur rippled through the room. "The model produces risk scores," Marcus continued. "Those scores are treated as authority. They don't feel advisory on the street." Crowley glanced over, lips curling. "You weren't there for our training." "I wrote part of the system you trained on," Marcus said evenly. Silence fell. The chair cleared his throat. "Let's keep this respectful." Marcus nodded. "Always." He took a breath. "The issue isn't whether the model uses racial variables. It doesn't. The issue is proxy variables, historical arrest density, patrol saturation, complaint underreporting. They reproduce bias without naming it." A council member leaned forward. "Can you explain that plainly?" Marcus nodded. "If you send more officers to a neighborhood, you find more incidents. That data feeds a model, which sends more officers back. It's a feedback loop. On paper, it's reasonable. In reality, it concentrates harm." Crowley scoffed softly. "So what, we ignore crime?" "No," Marcus said. "We stop pretending exposure equals danger." Helen shifted in her seat. "Marcus, you're oversimplifying." "I'm not," he said. "I'm isolating variables." The chair raised a hand. "Officer Crowley, did you know Mr. Reed was a contributor to the system when you stopped him?" Crowley hesitated, just a beat too long. "I learned that during the stop." "And did that affect your actions?" Crowley straightened. "No. I treated him like anyone else in that area." Marcus felt his mother's hand tighten on his arm. "Anyone else," Marcus repeated quietly. "That's the problem." A council member turned to Helen. "Were you aware officers could query individuals through the system?" Helen's lips pressed together. "The system allows identity verification when legally appropriate." "Was this legally appropriate?" Helen paused. "That's under review." Marcus leaned into the microphone. "It wasn't." Crowley snapped his head around. "You don't get to decide that." "I get to explain what the system was designed to do," Marcus said. "And what it wasn't." The chair glanced at his notes. "Mr. Reed, you submitted materials?" "Yes," Marcus said. "Alternative models, access logs, emails. And these suggest?" "That bias is an accident," Marcus said. "It's an outcome of choices." The room buzzed now. Reporters scribbled. Cameras zoomed. A council member asked Crowley, "Officer, are you saying you trust a model over your own judgment?" Crowley bristled. "I trust tools approved by the city." "So responsibility lies where?" "With the system," Crowley said, then caught himself. With policy. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. That was it. The sleight of hand. Responsibility evaporating into procedure. Helen spoke again, voice tight. No system is perfect. We're committed to improvement. Improvement without accountability isn't improvement, Marcus said. Helen looked at him then, really looked. You're asking us to dismantle a tool that's politically popular. I'm asking you to stop hiding behind it, Marcus replied. The chair banged the gavel lightly. Order. After a brief recess, an independent data auditor took the stand via video. Charts filled the screen behind him. Marcus's charts, refined and annotated. Our analysis confirms disproportionate impact, the auditor said, even controlling for reported crime. Crowley shook his head. Those models don't reflect reality on the ground. The auditor replied calmly. Neither does yours. That's the point. When the hearing adjourned, the room erupted into overlapping conversations. Reporters surged forward. Marcus's mother shielded him instinctively. Marcus, over here. Do you feel vindicated? Are you afraid of retaliation? He answered carefully. I'm afraid of silence. Helen approached then, eyes tired. I never wanted this to happen. Marcus met her gaze. But it did. She nodded. They're asking for your testimony in the internal review. Am I allowed back? For now, she said. Yes. Crowley passed by, close enough for Marcus to hear him mutter. This isn't over. Marcus watched him go. No, he said softly. It isn't. Outside, the sun was blinding after the controlled light of the hearing room. Marcus stepped onto the steps, breathing in exhaust and heat and noise. The city felt louder somehow, less willing to pretend. His phone buzzed, alerts, headlines, messages. Teen in turn challenges city policing algorithm. Data whistleblower exposes bias in crime model. Marcus exhaled slowly. This was what reasonable looked like when it was finally questioned. Not rage, not chaos, just facts refusing to stay quiet. Beside him, his mother squeezed his hand. I'm proud of you, she said. Marcus nodded, throat tight. He knew this wasn't the end. He knew the cost was still coming. But for the first time since the bus stop, since the word statistics had been thrown on like a verdict, Marcus felt the balance shift. Slightly, precariously, but undeniably. On paper, the system had always been reasonable. Now, so was doubt. And doubt, he was learning, was where accountability began. The audit didn't feel like justice. It felt like surgery. Slow, precise, and impossible to watch without flinching. Marcus sat in a borrowed office at the Civic Center, a temporary badge clipped to his jacket, watching independent analysts project his code onto a wall 3 stories high. Every function, every assumption, magnified. The room was quiet except for the low hum of machines and the occasional click of a laser pointer. Here, the lead auditor said, circling a section of logic. This waiting. Marcus nodded. That was a compromise. With whom? The auditor asked. Marcus didn't answer immediately. With reality, he said finally, or what the city said reality was. The auditors worked methodically. They tested counterfactuals, ran simulations, swapped datasets. Each time, the pattern reemerged, predictable, damning. Disparities that couldn't be explained by crime rates alone. Feedback loops that amplified exposure. Safeguards overridden by policy exceptions. This isn't a glitch, one auditor said. It's structural. The word landed heavy. Across the hall, city attorneys shuffled papers. Police representatives whispered among themselves. Helen Porter sat rigid at the end of the table, hands folded so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Crowley wasn't there. Marcus noticed his absence more than he expected. By afternoon, the first memo leaked. Independent audit confirms racial disparities in city policing algorithm. Marcus's phone buzzed nonstop. Journalists, advocates, strangers thanking him, strangers warning him. His mother texted once. Call me when you can, and he felt a wave of guilt for how far ahead of her life this had all run. That night, Crowley's name appeared everywhere. A local paper published a breakdown of his stop history. Numbers stripped of narrative, stacked one after another. 83% of stops involving black residents. Less than 2% resulting in arrests. Crowley went on leave the next morning. The department called it routine. The city called it precautionary. Marcus called it late. At the second hearing, the tone had changed. The council chamber was packed, bodies filling every row, voices spilling into the hallway. Protest signs leaned against the walls. Data is not neutral. We are not variables. The air buzzed with something raw and electric. This time, Marcus wasn't seated quietly at the table. He was called first. "Explain the system as if no one here trusts it," the chair said. Marcus leaned into the microphone. "That's fair." He spoke plainly. About proxies. About history disguised as math. About how neutrality could be engineered to fail. "This model didn't ask who was harmed," he said. "It asked what was efficient." A council member asked, "And who decided efficiency mattered more?" Marcus glanced down the row of officials. "All of us," he said, "by not asking better questions sooner." Helen testified next. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. "I believed transparency would protect us," she said. "I was wrong. Transparency without power is theater." That admission rippled through the room. When Crowley finally appeared via subpoena, the room went still. He looked smaller without the uniform. No badge, no radio. Just a man in a suit that didn't quite fit. "Officer Crowley," the chair said, "do you stand by your actions?" Crowley cleared his throat. "I followed policy." "Did you ever question it?" Crowley's jaw tightened. "That's not my job." Marcus felt something settle in his chest. Not satisfaction, not anger, recognition. "That's the problem." Marcus said quietly into his mic. Crowley turned toward him, eyes sharp. "You think this is on me?" "I think it passed through you," Marcus replied, "like it passed through the system. But it didn't start there." The room held its breath. Crowley scoffed. "You got lucky." Marcus met his gaze. "So, did you, for a long time." Afterward, the consequences came quickly and unevenly. The city suspended the model pending redesign. An oversight committee was announced, stacked carefully with community representatives and technical experts. Crowley was charged with civil rights violations related to unlawful stops. Not criminal, civil. Language chosen to sound measured. Helen resigned 2 weeks later. She sent Marcus a note. "I should have listened sooner. I'm sorry." He read it twice, then filed it away. The cause came from Marcus. 2. Online forums dug into his past, his family, his school. Comment sections filled with praise and poison in equal measure. "He's brave. He's a pawn. He just hates cops. He's a kid. What does he know?" One night, he found statistics scrawled in chalk outside his building. His mother cried when she saw it. His father scrubbed it off before dawn. "You didn't ask for this," his father said. Marcus shook his head. "I walked into it." At school, teachers pulled him aside, voices hushed. Friends didn't know what to say. Some avoided him. Others treated him like glass. He felt older than 17, worn in a way no resume could show. Yet amid the noise, something held. Community groups invited him to speak. Not as a prodigy, not as a symbol, but as a witness. He stood in church basements and library halls, explaining the system, listening to stories that filled in what data never could. A woman told him about her son, stopped weekly on his walk home. A man described losing his job after an arrest that led nowhere. Marcus listened, notebook closed, realizing how much the system had erased by design. One evening, after a long forum, Marcus sat alone on the steps outside the building. The city lights blurred, familiar and strange all at once. Lila sat beside him, quiet for a moment. "They're asking me to help redesign it," she said. Marcus nodded. "Will you?" "Only if you do," she replied. He thought about the nights he couldn't sleep, the bus stop, the chalk, the word statistics thrown like a sentence. "I don't want to build another shield," he said. "Then don't," Lila said. "Build a mirror." Marcus exhaled slowly. The code had been cross-examined, exposed, corrected. But code was only one witness. As he stood to leave, Marcus knew the hardest part wasn't proving the system was biased. It was proving that people still had a choice. And that choice, messy, uncomfortable, human, couldn't be automated away. Reform arrived wearing careful language. It came in press releases and policy drafts, in bullet points and timelines, in phrases like pilot program and stakeholder engagement. It came with applause at council meetings and op-eds praising the city's willingness to listen. Marcus learned quickly that reform liked to sound complete long before it actually was. The first redesign meeting took place in a windowless room on the third floor of City Hall. This time, there were no police uniforms at the table. Instead, community advocates, civil rights attorneys, data scientists, sociologists. Lila sat 2 chairs down from Marcus, a yellow legal pad already filled with notes. A facilitator clapped his hands. We're here to build something better. Marcus leaned forward. Then we need to agree on what better means. A woman from a neighborhood coalition spoke first. Better means my son doesn't get stopped for walking home. A data scientist added, better means measurable reductions in disparate impact. A city official said, better means a department can still operate effectively. Marcus listened, writing nothing. When the room paused, he spoke. Better means the system stops pretending it's neutral, he said. It needs constraints and consequences. The room stilled, not hostile, just attentive. They started with the basics. Variables on the table, stripped down and interrogated. Historical arrest data was flagged with bright red annotations. This can't be a primary predictor, Marcus said. At most, it's context, and even then, only with counterweights. What kind of counterweights? An advocate asked. Community harm indicators, Marcus replied. Complaint density, civil settlement history, not just where police go, but where damage accumulates. A lawyer raised an eyebrow. You're talking about quantifying harm. Yes, Marcus said. If the system counts risk, it has to count costs. That suggestion sparked resistance. You're opening us up to liability, a city attorney warned. Marcus met her gaze. We already are. This just makes it visible. They argue for hours, over definitions, over thresholds, over who decided when the system shut itself off. That part mattered most to Marcus. No more endless feedback loops, he said, tapping the table. The model needs circuit breakers, automatic reviews when disparities exceed limits, human sign-off with names attached. Names, someone repeated. Yes, Marcus said, so responsibility doesn't evaporate. By the end of the day, his throat hurt, his head ached, but the whiteboard was filled with changes that felt real, not cosmetic. Outside, reporters waited. Do you feel like you won? One asked. Marcus shook his head. This isn't a game. What about Officer Crowley? Another called. Justice. Marcus hesitated. Justice isn't just what happens to one person, he said. It's what stops happening to everyone else. Crowley's case moved quietly. No cameras, no grand statements. The civil suit settled first. Monetary damages paid to multiple plaintiffs whose stops were re-examined under new standards. Crowley was terminated shortly after, his name listed among dozens in a bland HR memo. No apology, no admission. Marcus felt no triumph when he read it, only a dull sense of inevitability. He'll land somewhere else, his father said one evening. I know, Marcus replied. That knowledge sat heavy. Systems changed faster than people. Sometimes people just learn to hide better. Helen Porter testified one final time before leaving her post. She looked smaller now, unguarded. I believe innovation could outrun history, she said. I was wrong. Marcus watched from the gallery. He didn't hate her. He didn't forgive her either. Some things lived in between. The redesigned system launched 6 months later, quietly. No slogans. No celebratory press conference. Instead, a public dashboard went live, one anyone could see. Stop rates by neighborhood. Disparity ratios. Automatic flags when thresholds were crossed. The first time an alert triggered and patrol deployment was paused pending review, Marcus sat at his desk and stared at the screen for a long time. It worked. Not perfectly, but honestly. Still, the cost lingered. Marcus jumped at sudden sounds now. He scanned rooms automatically, clocked exits without thinking. On buses, his muscles tensed when officers boarded. One afternoon, he caught his reflection in a window and didn't recognize the tightness in his own face. "You don't have to carry all of it," Lila said once, catching him late again. "I know," Marcus said. "I just don't know how to put it down." At a community forum, a man approached him afterward. "My nephew hasn't been stopped in 3 months," he said quietly. "First time in years." Marcus nodded, throat tight. "I'm glad." The man hesitated. "Doesn't it race before?" "No," Marcus said, "but it changes after." That night, Marcus walked home instead of taking the bus. The streets were calm, ordinary. A patrol car passed without slowing. He exhaled, surprised at how much that mattered. Correction factors, he'd learned, weren't just math. They were limits, interruptions, the refusal to let momentum masquerade as destiny. As Marcus reached his building, he looked back once at the street, at the absence of flashing lights, at the quiet that felt earned, not imposed. The system was better now, but so was he, harder in some places, steadier in others. And though the scars hadn't vanished, they no longer defined the future the code was shaping. For the first time since the bus stop, Marcus believed that change didn't have to be loud to be real. Sometimes it just had to be enforced. The city didn't feel transformed. That surprised Marcus more than anything. There were no sudden silences where sirens used to be, no dramatic shift in the rhythm of the streets. People still hurried, argued, laughed too loudly on corners. Police cars still rolled past, lights off, engines idling. Life continued with the same uneven pulse it always had. Change, Marcus realized, rarely announced itself. He noticed it instead in smaller ways. In the new public dashboard refreshing each morning without manipulation. In the automatic reviews triggered without anyone needing to ask permission. In the way officers now hesitated just a fraction longer before initiating a stop. Hesitation mattered. Marcus stood in his room one evening, tie half knotted, staring at himself in the mirror. He was 17 still, but the boy who had first walked into the Municipal Innovation Building felt distant. This version of him carried something heavier behind the eyes. Knowledge, maybe, or grief. "You ready?" his mother called from the hallway. "Yeah," he said, adjusting the knot. They were heading to a community forum downtown. Another one. Marcus had learned not to dread them, not to rush them either. The auditorium was half full when they arrived. No cameras this time. No reporters. Just folding chairs, a podium, and people who wanted answers that didn't come with footnotes. Marcus spoke without slides. "I used to believe data could protect people," he said. "I still do, but only if we admit what it can't do." A woman in the front row raised her hand. "What can it do?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He looked around the room, at faces marked by fatigue, by hope, by a cautious kind of trust. "It can't carry fear," he said finally, "or memory, or the way your body tightens when you see flashing lights even if nothing happens." A murmur of recognition rippled through the room. "It can't carry grief," he continued. "So if we only optimize numbers, we leave those things behind. And they don't disappear. They just collect interest." After the forum, an older man approached him slowly, leaning on a cane. "You remind me of my grandson," he said. "Smart, angry, careful." Marcus smiled politely. The man tapped the floor with the cane. "Just don't let them convince you the work is done." "I won't," Marcus said. That promise echoed later, alone in his room, laptop open, code scrolling past. He was helping Lila refine the harm indicators, making sure they couldn't be quietly deactivated, making sure alerts were logged publicly. Trust, Marcus had learned, was something you engineered redundancies around. Officer Crowley's sentencing came through an email Marcus didn't expect to feel much about. Civil penalties, loss of certification, a brief mention in the local paper, already buried beneath newer stories. No apology, no reckoning that felt equal to the harm. Marcus stared at the screen longer than necessary. His father knocked lightly and leaned against the doorframe. "You okay?" Marcus nodded. "I think I was waiting to feel something. And I don't," Marcus said. "Just tired." His father nodded. "That's honest." Later that night, Marcus dreamed of the bus stop. Not the lights, not the rain, just a word. Statistics. It floated in the air like chalk dust, stubborn and hard to wipe away. He woke before dawn, heart racing, and sat at his desk until the sky lightened. Trauma. He realized didn't care about outcomes. It didn't read press releases. It lived where code couldn't reach. At school, things slowly normalized. Teachers stopped whispering. Friends joked again, cautiously at first. Applications piled up, universities, fellowships, research programs. Go far, one counselor told him. Change everything. Marcus smiled politely. He didn't want to change everything. He wanted to make harm harder. One afternoon, months later, Marcus took the bus again. The same route, the same stop. The streetlight flickered like it always had. A patrol car passed without slowing. Marcus sat, backpack at his feet, hands relaxed in his lap. Nothing happened. The absence felt almost loud. When the bus arrived, Marcus boarded and took a seat by the window. The city slid past, imperfect, stubborn, alive. He thought about the system still running downtown, about the safeguards it might hold or might fail under pressure, about the people who would never know his name but would feel the difference in ways too small to headline. That was okay. Change didn't need witnesses to be real. His phone buzzed. A message from Lila. Oversight Committee approved the new shutdown protocol. Your idea stuck. Marcus exhaled slowly. At home, his mother was cooking. Music played softly in the background. You look lighter, she said. I'm not, Marcus replied. Then, after a pause, but I'm steadier. That felt truer. Later, alone, Marcus opened a new document. Not code, not testimony, just words. He wrote about the night at the bus stop, about fear disguised as math, about how systems learn from the past unless someone forced them to imagine a different future. At the top of the page, he typed a line and left it there. Numbers don't decide who we are. People do. Marcus closed the laptop and lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling. The city hummed outside, familiar and flawed. The work wasn't over. It never would be. But the system no longer spoke without challenge. And Marcus, once reduced to statistics, had learned the most important lesson of all. Justice couldn't be automated. It had to be maintained. Every day,